Folks, it's been a minute since I've been here. The last time I came to talk was, I think, 2017 or 2018, and apparently it took them that long to get over it to invite me back, so hopefully this one doesn't suck, and I'll try my best. But really, I wanted to talk to you about a couple things today. OT threats, for sure, are going to be a component of it, and we'll stand over here now. And talk about OT cyber threat landscape and things like that, but really I want to take a different approach. I want to have a talk that's really built a little bit more on a reflections kind of basis. 10 years is something special. It's something special for this community and this conference, but it's also this month the 10-year anniversary of Dragos. And so there's a thing about 10 that I'm going to celebrate, and I really want to talk to you about sort of where we've been, especially in the OT space and what it means to you, and then where I think we're going. And I think there's a lot of unease these days as I talk to folks, whether it's politics or geopolitical or local security or international security or AI and mythos and all these things. There's a lot of uncertainty and unease with folks. And I think one of the beautiful things about the BSides community, one of the things that I love about these kind of more community-like conferences is that community piece. And we can come together as a community and kind of work through that unease. But I'll give you my perspective on it. And I'm going to try to walk over here again and see if this works. Look at that, dialed in. Thank you. All right, so OT. For those of you that are unfamiliar with OT, operations technology, it's the critical part of critical infrastructure, right? And I think there's a lot of questions that I get from times of is this device an OT device, or is this device an IT device, or what is it? And the classification really is built around what is it doing, not the operating system. There's a lot of Windows servers in an operations technology environment. And I've seen that definition sort of morph over the years, where even people are like, it's X-IoT, and I'm like, stop it. Right? There's nothing in common between Alexa and a gas turbine, knock that off. But when we look at it, I think you'll probably see me start using this more often. I think we'll start taking it back and say, well, it's X-OT then. Well, we're extending OT, not the other way around. And when you look at that, it's really around the control loop and the physical process. It's what are the digital components and all the things required to enact change in our physical world, whether it's a valve opening up something, if it's a sluice gate for a dam, if it's an electric transmission substation, if it's the manufacturing we use for our pharmaceuticals and our food and beverage. All of that stuff is a physical world. And it's really interesting to me how many folks over the years have viewed that as a niche. And I would just say there's a very large IT security bias to say, hey, the stuff that actually generates all the revenue and has all the actual impact on society, that's the niche, but the server, that's the point. I'm like, okay, bold take, but probably not one shared by most folks outside of InfoSec. And when we look at that world of OT, it's changed a lot in ways that we never intended, right? Like Mr. Edison never intended us to have automatic generation control capabilities at a transmission system operator, activate a gas turbine system at a generator 100 miles away, and immediately start putting it on the electric system because a market operator thought it was a nice time, like a stock market. That's not how it was designed, okay? But it's interesting now with what all that complexity means, not only for us, but for our adversaries as well. So I'm gonna walk you down that journey, but I also want to reflect, again, 10 years and tie the Dragos story in here a little bit, not as a yay Dragos and all that stuff. I'm not going to product pitch to you. But I do think there's something special for all of us in this community to think about sort of bucking the trends. Like when I started Dragos, I did it out of Maryland, and so it's a Maryland-based company. And I remember being told, just consistently, that it was a stupid idea. But everybody, every venture capitalist that I talked to, I went to Sand Hill Road, did the whole Silicon Valley trip, and sort of walked and took the road and met all these investors. I took 123 venture capital meetings. And every single one of them told me this was a really, really stupid idea. OT, that's niche. Why didn't you want to sell to Facebook instead? I'm like, all right. And how none of this was all that important to do. And I looked at it and said, okay, maybe it's a bad market, maybe it's a stupid idea, but it's important. It's important to all of us. Like my hometown in Alabama, Coleman, Alabama, doesn't get served by Southern Company, though they're a good company. It gets served by Coleman Cooperative Electric. It's the small infrastructure, it's the local aspect, it's our communities. And the idea that our communities aren't worthy of protection, the idea that our communities are too small to matter, that seems off. And so we started Dragos, and it's been cool. We were the first independent OT security company to be worth more than $1 billion. That was fun. Now we're a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's all out of Maryland. And I think that's neat, especially to this community, that you can create companies here. You can be an entrepreneur. You can do something that matters, And all the Silicon Valley sort of discussions eventually were like, well, you can't do that out of Maryland. You need to be in the Valley. Someone came to us for our Series A and said, we'll fund you, but you have to move to the Valley. I'm like, why? They're like, well, the engineering talent is here. I'm like, oh man, you haven't been to Baltimore. You haven't been to like DC, you haven't been to Fort Meade area. Like, that's a cute statement. You built a couple cloud companies or something, but like, there's a lot of stuff happening out East Coast. And I think it's important for companies like Tenable and Dragos and the different ones that have come out of Maryland to keep highlighting that the East Coast has got some amazing talent, amazing people. It's worthy of investment. And so that's how I sort of marry that up with the OT idea. It's worthy of investment. It matters, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening there that people don't understand. So let's skip to the changes in infrastructure that have taken place and what it means from a threat perspective. And then, unfortunately, with most of my talks, it gets eventually to like death, destruction, and war. So we'll get to that at the end. But there's a good hope thing in there too. So in the world of operations technology, we used to have very, very heterogeneous, disconnected, kind of one-off infrastructure. And even when it became connected, it was still heterogeneous. It was diverse. A carbon cracker in Dammam, Saudi Arabia had very little of anything to do with a water filtration system in Pittsburgh. The infrastructure, the original equipment manufacturers, the integrators, the physical process, the digital components, it was all different. Very, very different. And what that meant is that when something went wrong, you turned to your people and said, hey, Lisa, what the hell happened? And Lisa had worked there for 20 years, her daddy worked there for 20 years, her granddaddy worked there for 20 years, and Lisa knew the plant. And Lisa could tell you, here's what's going on in the plant, this is what went wrong, let's recover this asset safely. Because a lot of people, I think, sometimes have the notion that operations technology, they really care about availability. Not necessarily. Some industries do, some don't. It depends. But we really do care about knowing what the hell is happening in our infrastructure so that if we do need to recover it, we can do it safely. And then we can understand how to bring up our asset or how to control and operate our asset in a safe way. So Lisa was our root cause analysis. Like, Lisa was the person you called. Lisa could figure it out. We had a very heterogeneous world. It also meant for the adversaries, it was very, very difficult to do attacks. There's a lot of hype in the community. Actually, for the first couple years at Dragos, most of my time was killing the hype in the media. They're like, you're going to take down the power grid through a phishing email. And I'm like, that's not how physics works, and there's not one power grid. And so there's a whole thing pushing back on a lot of this stuff. But from an adversary perspective, again, very, very difficult. And I got my start in the community serving in the Air Force, tasked over the National Security Agency, and I built out the US government's mission doing intelligence and response work for industrial control systems. But for a portion of my time, they put me on the offense. That was also when I decided it was time for me to leave. They put me on the offense, and we used to not call it offense. I think at the time I would say that I did a lot of free, unsolicited penetration testing of foreign government assets. It was fun. And let me tell you my experience of what those offensive operations looked like. Not with anything sensitive, but abstracted details, and give you an example of what the community on the offensive side was going through. I'd have some Joint Forces commander walk in and say, we're gonna strike these targets in this sandy place, right? And I'm like, okay. And they'd look around the table and they'd go, what capabilities do you all have? They didn't care about cyber or air or tanks, whatever. They want an effect. They're asking for, like, what can you do? They go around the room, they go around everybody, they finally get to Captain Lee, and they're like, what can you do, cyber person? And I'm like, at the time I had glasses. I think it was mostly for effect, but I had to push the glasses up and was like, well, from a cyber capability, if you give me 18 months, $30 million, and 13 people, I can develop you a capability for that target to be able to disrupt to the point of even doing physical destruction to take it down. They were like, cool, $30 million, that's nothing in the military, okay, 13 people, we got plenty of those. 18 months? What do you need 18 months for? I was like, well, researching the target, going to this, going to that, figuring this out, and like building the infrastructure, mock labs, trying to have a range to do it. And they're like, stop, you've done attacks before. Why can't you just do that stuff? I'm like, oh, it's different. Like, that site that we did before, wildly different than this site. And if you want me to be able to do this, I have to have the time for this specific target. Because in a heterogeneous world, it was all diverse, it was all different. And the military commander would be like, well, what happens if we change targets? And I'm like, start over. And they're like, okay. They're like, well, what happens, like once you finish, how often can we use the capability you develop? And I'm like, against that target, as often as you would like, everyone else, probably not. And they'd look around and they'd be, deeply, obviously, visibly disappointed. And they'd look over to the pilot and they'd be like, what can you do? And the pilot would be like, I can be sober in 6 hours and bomb it. Congratulations. Like, At that point, the pilot wins. And why do I point this out? Prior to 2021, every single disruptive or destructive attack you ever saw in OT was carried out by intelligence agencies, not non-state actors, not militaries. Militaries don't sit around and think. That's like not what we're known for. But intelligence agencies can do stuff like that. Intelligence agencies are like, let's hack everything just in case somebody walks in and wants access. You know, they forward plan these things. And they've got interesting research labs and all sorts of fun stuff. So everything prior to 2021, intelligence agencies don't like to really do Title X type attacks of anywhere in the world. They really want to be spying and watching. And so sometimes they get tapped to do the offensive operations, but they don't like it, so you don't see a lot of it happen. So what does that mean? It means if you're in the broader InfoSec world, the broader community, and you are dealing with low frequency, high consequence attacks, but in your enterprise IT networks, you've got high frequency, maybe low consequence, but high frequency every day. You're getting the phishing emails and the scams and everything else, and you're dealing with it all the time. You're eventually going to stop thinking about the stuff that you don't see anything happening with. And so the entirety of the cybersecurity community said, let's focus on this enterprise IT stuff. And to executives and boards and CEOs and national policy leaders, enterprise IT came to mean and represent the enterprise, although it did not. There was a lot of CEOs and policy leaders that I talked to that believe that their dashboards and KPIs and the green things they get for enterprise IT means all the substations and plants, but it does not. So all the investments of cybersecurity reasonably went to where the risk was. But that only exists in a heterogeneous world that's very diverse, where militaries are not in the discussion. And again, all that changed. Happened a lot behind the scenes. It wasn't like magically 2021 we just cut over. 2021 is when the adversaries figured it out. I'll come back to that. So what does our modern infrastructure look like now? Homogeneous. Code assist running under every PLC out there, program logic controller. Rockwell, Emerson, Yokogawa, major OEMs buying up other original equipment manufacturers. Integrators becoming global integrators, standardization taking place, open distributed control system standards, open protocols, a lot of commonality. A lot of IT stuff got into OT. It's still OT because of that control loop and the physics and the physical process. Is a printer IT or OT? I don't know. What's it doing? Printing off reports to the substation. It's in the OT network. I'd still say it's not OT. Printing off the labels that if it stops, I can't ship the product off the manufacturing line, the manufacturing line has to shut down. Sounds pretty OT to me. It's the context. But we now have all this stuff. Digitization, connectivity, homogeneous, cloud historians doing data analysis to forecast weather events. It's all homogeneous. What does that mean for us before the adversaries? It means that Lisa has no idea how that plant works anymore. All that stuff that she and her dad and her granddad worked on and grew up with, it's different. Now it's complex systems of systems, massive automation packages, AMI infrastructure, connectivity everywhere that's creating a control loop that's not just a subsystem. At best, your engineers and operators may understand a subsystem. They do not understand anymore all of it because it's very complex. They don't need to. They need to be able to specialize. Specialization happens in every field. So now they understand a component of what's operating, but not the plant. Nobody does. Which means when something goes wrong, now you got to call a lot of people together and try to figure out what the hell is going on. And I will tell you, I've been involved in a lot of incident response cases over the last 12 to 18 months where fundamentally, when the incident happens, they have no idea whether it's cyber or not. And there's a lot of folks that are going, well, I'm going to run indicators of compromise against the human-machine interface. I'm like, that's not how these attacks happen. Most of the attacks that we see are adversaries that misoperate the equipment. I don't need an exploit or a vulnerability or malware to open up a circuit breaker. That's a function in the HMI that the operator has access to. Why would I exploit something to give me exactly what I have access to? So yeah, exploits and vulnerabilities and malware and OT exist, but most of the stuff we see is the misoperation using the native functionality of the system of systems. And that system-to-system focus is between System 1, System 2, and System 3 physical impact, which means it's not host logs. And what has the information security community done since we looked away from OT and said, let's look at enterprise IT? We went massively host, which was smart. Because if you're dealing with threats targeting your enterprise IT environment, you care about your data, you care about personal data and credit cards and all these things. and there's product security is really important for host security and EDR and patching and passwords and all this. You take a very host, maybe eventually we get to the network kind of view, just generally. Makes sense. But in the world of OT, if we're systems of systems, I don't actually care about any one host. I could physically set your Russian operator down at the engineer workstation at most substations, and they still wouldn't know how to make the lights blink. The point isn't the system, it's the understanding of how the systems of systems works together. And so that means a lot of that data is network data, it's transient. Was the command sent, yes or no? I don't know. Were you collecting the data ahead of it being sent? If not, it's gone. I've been involved in some incident response cases that we can't name, but you would be able to point to in the media, very large national events, where governments and others have come out and said, it's not cyber, it's not a cyber attack. And the reason they've said that is we're usually advising them to say that because they don't have the data to prove it one way or the other. There's a lot of things happening that we just simply don't know because they're not collecting the right data sets ahead of time. That's a homogeneous world, a systems of systems world. The inability to do root cause analysis unless you prepare really well ahead of time. Mapping out what data am I going to need. Getting the executives together to go, cool, we're going to get sued because we're in infrastructure. Everybody uses us, everyone likes us, everyone hates us. It's like you're the protester that goes to the gas site to like protest, still uses your gas to drive there. It's adorable. So like we are basically hated in the infrastructure community by all the people that leverage it. Okay, so you're going to get sued in your incident. You are going to have shareholders discussions. You're going to have an SEC 8K filing if you're public. You've got to figure out the data, have operations, get back up and running, and security is going to want to understand some things too. You've got a set of probably 20 questions that are going to need to get answered, and unless people are thinking about that ahead of time and figuring out what data maps to each one of these questions, they're not collecting it, and we get into a place going, I don't know, what happened? I don't know. That sucks. That's making every government around the world very uncomfortable. For some reason, I get to talk to a lot of heads of state and various people around the world, and they're all thinking OT, and they're all very uncomfortable with the reality that somebody could lose their life on their soil, and we wouldn't know if it was an attack from somebody or not. That's not a place most governments are going to be comfortable staying long, and I expect we'll see a much different regulatory view in the future if this doesn't get solved very quickly. But let's come back to the adversary. So what does the adversary do in this world of root cause analysis being difficult and homogeneous systems and commonality and all that stuff? They scale their operations. They get to a place where that same conversation, like I'm back in the military now, it's a weird conversation. I got a phone call, like as a quick aside, it was like, hey, once you're back in the military, I'm like, that's adorable. I got the tattoos, got the t-shirt, not doing it again. They're like, no, and it was like the powers that may be without naming them, obviously. But anyways, powers that may were like, no, we want you back. And I'm like, for what? And like, we think we probably will actually go to war with China sometime in 2027, 2030, and their game plan is almost exclusively to hit OT, energy, food supply chains, et cetera, to scare the public and keep us out of the war. And we have no actual national response plan. Like most government agencies are like, call me. It's like FBI says, call me for instant response and help. CISA says, call me. You know, National Guard sometimes call me. At the end of the day, it's like a bad Carly Rae Jepsen song, and nobody knows what you're actually going to get in the response. So they're like, hey, can you come back and like build it out from a National Guard perspective and so forth? You've been complaining about this for like 15 years. Why don't you come and fix it? I was like, that's fair. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And they're like, cool, you're the XO down at the brigade. I'm like, sorry, what now? And they're like, you're the XO at the brigade level XO. And I'm like, XO? What the fuck's an XO and what's a brigade? And they're like, I was Air Force. They're like, well, congratulations, you're Army now. I'm like, okay, cool. So now I'm a lieutenant colonel down in the Army Guard, where my nights and weekends job is figuring out how to not have China kill a bunch of people, which is fun. That's spare cycles. That's good, right? Anyway, so adversary perspective, though, I don't do anything offense. So as part of the deal with me going back, I was like, I'm not touching that. Like, Dragos is a global company. I want to kick everybody out of infrastructure that's not invited. US, Israel, China, Russia, Iran. If you're not invited in civilian infrastructure, get out. There's no good guys or bad guys. They're just assholes. That's what we call them when you target civilians. And I'd like to kick the assholes out. So I can't be involved in the offensive side. So I only do that disclaimer to say I'm happy to tell you what it's going to look like anyways, but I'm not involved in it. So what is that conversation now that Captain Lee took before that Colonel Lee would have to take now? That conversation, when the Joint Forces Commander goes around, and this is every military in the world has the same kind of thing, Joint Forces Commander goes around the room and says, what do you got? What can you do? Now, that person in charge of the cyber offensive side says, hey, 18 months ago, we built a capability for your target. And they go, well, you didn't know what my target was. Well, if it's OT, this works. I'm like, what do you mean works? Everything from unmanned aero vehicle servo motors to water pumps to electric substation. If it's generally modern infrastructure, last 15 years, this thing can operate and work on it. okay, well, what's the risk of using this capability? Like, is it a one-time capability? We use it and they patch this or whatever? Like, no, no, no. It's using the native functionality built into these systems. It works forever. You're like, so you've built me a forever capability that works on almost any target and it can do destruction? It's like, well, if physics allows it, you can't violate the laws of physics. This isn't the energy policy of the US, but it's completely divorced. But anyways, so you can't violate the laws of physics, but if the physical environment will allow an explosion, yes, but we can at least do disruption at all of it. And I go, what does it cost? And I go, oh, it costs like $30 million, which is like a credit card swipe for militaries. And they go, okay, well, yeah, that sounds like a great option. That happened in 2021. That capability was called Pipe Dream. It was a government in the world. You couldn't like really guess and be wrong in this, but there was a government in the world that wanted to prepare to go to war with the United States and NATO. Hint, hint. Anyways, they wanted to prepare for going to war with the United States and NATO, and so they built a capability called Pipe Dream that was their wartime capability. They picked out a bunch of targets across the US and other locations. They haven't done it yet, but through the magic of intelligence sharing work, Dragos and an undisclosed third party collaborated together to identify and analyze the capability prior to its employment. Lawyer speak. Anyways, and so when that capability was talked about and like published on, it's available for people to learn about, but there's no patching it or fixing it. It's the can you detect and respond and deal with this thing. And that thing works. And guess what? When it was identified, every government around the world is like, I want one of those. Parity is a thing in international relations. If Pakistan has a capability, India wants one. If China has a capability, the United States has one. If Iran has it, Israel wants it. It's international parity. You want what your peers have in terms of capability, which creates a little bit of an arms race. And so all this discussion of, oh, we can actually target OT now, and it's not as expensive to do, it's not as specialized knowledge, and it's scalable. Congratulations, you're no longer in the world of intelligence agencies only. You've now entered the domain of militaries. And guess what militaries don't do very well? They don't shut up. Even the guy that like killed Osama bin Laden was like, I'm gonna write a book. And I was like, God bless. And so militaries tend to talk about their capabilities or run national exercises and release capabilities idiotically onto VirusTotal where people, my team, pick it up and go, I think this is what they're going to use in Taiwan. And all this type of stuff takes place, and as a result, it starts proliferating to non-state actors. And if you think there's deterrence with governments, I don't buy that. To be a deterrent, you have to have a credible threat and a red line. And on everything cyber, when our adversaries were like, what do you do if we hack you? Like, I don't know, but we'll tell you when we do it. Like, what's the level of hacking that you care about? I don't know, but we'll tell you when you see it. Like, you can't have deterrence in that world. So governments have long figured out that attacking infrastructure, going after Ukraine, going after wherever else, like, they can do it. So I don't think there's as much deterrence as you think, but there's like none with non-state actors. And so we are seeing non-state actors now where state actors who are involved in OT operations, we see them very clearly sharing infrastructure and sharing knowledge with non-state actors. We were tracking one group that for a while was like hacking internet-facing HMIs and like writing like Israel sucks on them and stuff. And it was like, hey, this is not very nice, but it's not like scary. They were doing that, and within like a month, they had like a pause in operations and came back with like PLC level implants, lateral logic manipulation, physical process manipulation, like stuff that you don't learn in a month, stuff that they got to knock on the door and they're like, here's your new capability package. Non-state actors share with everybody, all right? And so you are getting to a point where those low-frequency, high-consequence events are now starting to become more and more frequent. Like we took like 7 incident response cases in like a week this past month when the Iran stuff kicked off. Like they're becoming a lot more public, like a lot more frequent than people realize. But 2 themes commonly happen. Or I should say, sorry, 3 themes commonly happen. Number 1, most of the cases still don't get in the public for good reason. Number 2, a lot of the cases don't get diagnosed correctly, so cyber is never even considered as a part of the component of it. And number 3, when they do, sometimes the incident response team that comes in looks at it and goes, oh, it's a Windows server, it's an IT incident. Like, nope, that's a SCADA system. And so they're getting mislabeled as well. And it's really throwing off the understanding of how frequent some of these things are doing and getting, but they are a lot more frequent, and they are going to become more and more frequent as more actors have more scalable capabilities. It's just the laws of InfoSec. All the time that there's still people in the community going, IT, OT, it's all T. It's like, oh, God. Or why would we even focus on that? We've segmented it away. Like, okay, so here's where we're going, and that logic is not going to keep you safe. And let me say this, I love this community. I spend a lot of time teaching. By the way, I'm just curious, how many of you have ever taken one of my classes? Just a couple of people? Yeah, there's a couple of you. Good. I love teaching, I love being in this community, I love everything about it. Like, I really, really do. I'm really getting to that, maybe it's just you get old, but I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'm tired of that part of it. And what I mean by that part of it is I don't believe in the industrial threats, or I don't believe this, or I don't believe that. And it's like, it's not religion. You can assess, but you don't believe or not believe. And I find it really interesting as I sit on a set of data and insights, and we're tracking like 27 groups around the world that are targeting OT. And I'll still get people who are like, I don't believe this is a real thing. And I'm like, okay. I just go back to, I think it was Dracula 2000 was the movie. I don't know, very tangenty. Anyways, Dracula 2000, and it was like this vampire, and the guy was above him with like a crucifix, and he's like laughing, the vampire, and he's like, ha ha ha, I don't believe in God. And then he like pushes a button, and a knife comes out, and it's like, don't worry, he believes in you, and like stabs him. And like, that's very like OT threats, okay? There's a lot of people with the, it's not gonna happen to me. And it's like, you do know that's the one thing you don't get a vote on, right? Whether or not you're relevant to the adversary or whether or not you're a good target to the adversary is the only thing you don't control. Everything else, how you design it, how you train your people, your infrastructure, where you do business, the security controls you use, you control the whole playing field. The offense does not have the upper hand. The defense has the upper hand. Whether or not you use it is dependent upon you, but you've got it. The only thing you don't get a vote on is if you're a good target. And so here's where we're going and where I'm getting really concerned. And this is not even with like Iran and China in the discussion yet. I've been involved in some of the mythos stuff in circles and interesting dialogues and all this. And I think a lot of the AI stuff is a bit hyped, but not too hyped. What I mean by that is are we gonna see AI models that just start creating OT malware and deploying it and self-hacking and bringing down utilities and data centers and ports and stuff all around the world? And like, I don't see anything that says that right now. I see that when you have good data and good analysts, AI is an enabler. I see that when you have shitty analysts and shitty data, it's still shitty. And AI doesn't make it a whole lot less shitty. And so I don't buy into, and I don't have any information at this point in time that would suggest that we're gonna see like AI models get out and just start hacking the world, at least on OT. I don't know about IT, I don't really care about the IT side of the house, sorry, like good luck. Anyways, but on the OT side of the house, I don't see any indications of that whatsoever. What I do see though, is on the product security vulnerability side and all that the perimeter is about to get blasted. And if you took I'm going to just put firewalls and segmentation and I'm good now with security, I think you're kind of screwed very quickly. And it's going to be a whole lot more, can you actually empower smart humans, maybe with AI or not as well, with tools, capabilities, and knowledge to be able to do detection, response, and be resilient. Still do prevention where you can, but we all talked in the community like, you should prevent what you can, but you should definitely get to detection and response. Like, those days are now here. And it is required. And what I'm worried about is to roll out an OT security program to go and actually get into the plants of whatever capability you're going to use, to skill up your workforce, to change the cultures and mindsets internally, to get the collaboration required, to then go and actually learn to do detection response and hunting and instant response and all that stuff. For most, that's like a 5-year journey. And there's a lot of people in the community that are just now thinking like, oh, I should start that journey. I'm going, 5-year inflection window here is really bad for where we're at currently. And so I do think we're gonna see some pretty nasty things within the next couple of years. And it deeply bothers me. And I don't know how to fix time. We can fix some things of like, let's go quickly on this, that, and the other. But even if you're moving quickly, some are at best in a 2 or 3 year event window. And so having those conversations in your company right now, if you have OT, or out in the community as you go and evangelize and so forth, there's gotta be we are gonna start putting these things in place, but how do we just batten down the hatches right now anyways of some of the things we're doing? And hey, we actually haven't connected everything up to the cloud yet. Like, is now the right time? And like, these are some very interesting questions to be having inside of an event window. Because here's where we're gonna start going very quickly. Going back to the AI thing. I'm not concerned about AI hacking the world, but I do think that we're gonna see a lot of AI in operations in the control loops. So let's go back to the discussion of us, not the adversary. When you look at operations, all these companies are getting pressed hard. The electric utilities, if you look at the energy bills, actually most electric utility bills are slower in rise than the actual inflation rates. But they're still getting beat up because the prices are rising and people are having a hard time. So they're doing anything and everything that they can to figure out, how do I run this complex energy system and keep the bills low? How do I not put CapEx back on the rate base and so forth? And that's a lot of automation, and AI is pretty interesting sounding for that. We're seeing right now agentic AI be rolled out at wind farms and solar farms and battery farms and stuff already. And it will not be long before it is in a substation. It will not be long before it's in control centers. I've got mining customers that are already rolling out agentic AI in like self-driving Caterpillar vehicles and so forth around big, heavy mines. Stuff that, if you get wrong, can kill people. That complexity just made Lisa's job about 1,000 times harder. So the ability of AI to hack the world, forget it. Our embracing of it in our infrastructure is going to add complexity and the difficulty of getting root cause analysis to the point that people are going to die and we will not know why. So let that sit in for a second. I know I told you I'm going to get to the place where I'm not the happy speaker, but we're going to get consequences where we're talking loss of human life, not credit card theft. And I'm so grateful to people working in the financial services that protect my credit card. But I got 4 kids now, and I'm thinking the world they're going into is a little bit weird. And that's without all the politics, okay? That's just infrastructure management. And I got asked recently at a board level, at a board meeting, and I didn't realize it was recorded. It was just always interesting when it was a public power company. I don't think anybody in the world has ever had to wonder my opinion, but recording it and putting it out there is another one. And I got asked the question, like, what's the #1 risk that you see to the energy sector? And they were thinking cyber and OT and all this, and I was like, honestly, it's that at a lot of the companies I see, there's so much financial pressures, mining, manufacturing, electric, whatever, and there's money to be made that private equity investors and others are getting involved, and the CEOs aren't coming from the ops floor anymore. They're CFOs, and they're investment bankers. And as I look around this boardroom, there's not one person here that's ever been in the substation. And I think you're going to then start authorizing projects and programs and investments without understanding the context of your business. And that scares me. And it scares me for what it means for our infrastructure. It doesn't mean you can't be a CFO and be a good CEO. Like, I've got one at a power company that is fantastic, but he spent like 20 years in the industry to then make that journey. And so it was okay. I don't care your background as long as you spent the time to understand the business that you operate. And so the convergence of massive complexity inside of systems of systems, the convergence of adversaries who are assholes and are happy to target infrastructure, the convergence of the ability to cause physical impact in that world, all built on the basis that you may not even know what took place, you don't know what plan to activate, it gets a little dicey, and then we bring in, oh yeah, we might go to war. That's an interesting convergence of events. So let me take it back to maybe trying to bring us out of this as I end this. So where's that 10-year remembrance thing and what I want to talk about at the beginning about like Dragos and BSides and all this? Here's what it is, and here's why it matters. Here's why this audience matters. April 2016, I started Dragos, 10 years this year. My company employees have heard me start talking a little bit differently. And I explicitly have been telling them, for the first time ever at Dragos, I feel like we're not going to just like die. Like bankruptcy, but even in a startup, you're always like, where's the next thing, and let's go, and like, I gotta raise capital, whatever. I'm to a point now, if I never raise another dollar of capital, I can run the company profitably and be okay. When that comes off your back, you're like, oh, things are okay. We went through all of our drama at Dragos at various points in history, and it feels like good right now. And I'm looking around at my team, I'm like, shit, this is working. And it feels good. And what that meant was, for the first time in 10 years, I had the opportunity to start sitting back and thinking more instead of reacting, and start thinking about what does the future hold. And so a lot of my employees will have heard me talk about this, and I think it's just as relevant to OT security, and I think it's just as relevant to this community, which is how do we build a 100-year company? How do we build something that outlasts us? Because I see a very interesting market and very interesting mission moment. I see a lot of our competitors who are good people, by the way. Like, if you're in OT security, I don't care if we compete. Like, welcome to the party, pal. Thanks for being here, okay? But if you're in OT security, most of those companies are selling off to like OEMs or taking debt rounds or like struggling, or let's sell to an IT player who's just going to cannibalize us for IT use cases. And so there's not a lot of competitors left in this space. And then I look at the mission moment of all the changing infrastructure and the threats and all the things that are going on, and countries explicitly saying, including ours, that targeting OT and targeting energy infrastructure and targeting things like that is okay somehow. And I go, there's a market and a mission moment to get this right. There's a responsibility, not a yay us, but a responsibility. And I've started to have to think about, what does it mean to be a 100-year company? Early on in my career, I was like, I'll take venture capital, and I'll IPO and exit the venture capitalists, and that'll bring stability. And then you actually start looking at the IPO markets and how that actually takes place and everything else. You're like, actually, you're not guaranteed to stick around for 100 years just because you go public. That's not the vehicle either. And so I had to think about, like, what vehicles, what structure, how to do it financially, what makes sense to get us around for 100 years. And then I realized that was the easier part of the problem. And we'll have to make some changes and do some things, and that's great, but that's the easier part of the problem. It was, I'm going to die. Everybody in my team that I'm very excited about, that I'm like, man, we're nailing this and we're doing good, they're all going to die. It's the only thing you're guaranteed, right? Again, I'm gonna pull this out. Don't worry, hold on. All right. We're all gonna die. I can't trust in anybody on my team now to be here in 100 years. So the thing that I'm built and that I love and that I think is very mission-driven, and we have like programs like Community Defense Program, where any utility in North America under 100 million in revenue gets all of our software, our training, everything for free forever, which is about 97% of all the utilities. How do I know the next CEO is not going to come in and go, it's a small, medium market, we could make some money on that, instead of just doing mission? So the harder part's not the vehicle or the capital structure or what allows the entity to exist. You should think about those things. But it's, I like this team, I trust this team, but none of them are going to be here in 100 years. So how do I make sure that team understands what we're doing? And that, to me, came back to culture. It came back to values. It came back to mission. It came back to how you treat people. It came back to how you reward and incentivize the treatment of others. It was all of that stuff. And I think, without going on a Dragos tangent, I think that's as relevant to y'all and in this community. And you hit your 10 years at BSidesCharm, congratulations. Is there a BSidesCharm 100? Why not? But what would it be? What would the components of this community be investing in and codifying now to make sure that we've got a vibrant InfoSec community, that we've got a bunch of people who give a shit 90+ years from now? And I think a lot of us should think a little bit more about that. And I'll give you a statement that's going to sound inherently political. And trust me, no one can ever figure out what I am. Like, the Democrats will have me like testify in Congress because I think I'm one of theirs. The Republicans will have me testify in front of Congress because I think I'm one of theirs. And I just feel like the Ents in Lord of the Rings of like, nobody cares about me, so I care about nobody. Like, it's just like one of those, like, I'm not anybody. I just want my kids to be safe. And so I'll help anybody, and I'll support either side of it. But here's my damn near political statement somehow. If in 100 years we don't think about our neighbors, if in 100 years we're not thinking about our community, in 100 years our shared infrastructure that we all depend upon and take value of, that we're not treating it well, planet and everything else too in that, but I'll stick to OT, I don't think that's what any of us would envision that looking like. No matter what your view is today of the political strife or geopolitical strife, whatever, they're all dead in 100 years. Don't worry. You don't worry about it, okay? Could be dead soon. Who knows? So, like, a lot of this is what does it mean in 100 years? I have nobody to hate in 100 years because I don't know them. I don't know what they've done. I just know a couple values and commonalities that I'd like to be in place for them, for our descendants or not. And again, here's the political statement. And I'm going to bring this back to like an American thing. I don't know. Now that I'm back in the military, I feel like a little bit more like I'm allowed to embrace the American piece. So even though we're a global company, I'm like, yeah, America. And here's my like American pride statement. I go around the world and am embraced in different countries because I've always been I do not care about the politics. I'm here to protect infrastructure. Let's do that with a community building mindset. And generally speaking, most countries around the world love that. When I go to Singapore, they would make me a Singaporean citizen tomorrow. I know various ministers there and so forth. They've asked me to move there. They love me. They think I'm additive to the community. I love them. They're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful souls. They'd have me there as a citizen tomorrow. I'll never be Singaporean. My wife is German. My kids are German. I have a house in Germany. I pay taxes. I can move there. They love me. I was stationed there years ago. I'm one of the members of the community. I'm never going to be German. Saudi Arabia, I've got like 2 brothers in life, Tim Conway and Dr. Saad. Dr. Saad and I go way back, and the Saudi culture and community has embraced me for a long, long time on the shared values of community and infrastructure. Forget your politics. On infrastructure and community and kids, we always were aligned. and I could move there tomorrow. They'd set me up in a nice villa. They'd celebrate the moment. They'd give me citizenship. I walk in sometimes, the airport in Saudi. Saudis are great. Walk in, they'll see me, they're like, oh, Habibi, huh, and they move me through the express lane. Difficult now that I lost the beard, but it used to. And they would embrace me in a heartbeat. But I will never be Saudi. But the thing I think about a lot with America, that at its core, one of the most beautiful things that we have is anybody in the world can come here and be American. Not a citizen, but American. And if that bothers you on some political spectrum, I'm telling you, you're off, okay? And I don't know your views in life, and you don't know mine, but if that one doesn't resonate with you, you're just wrong in the societal view of history. And when I think about building a 100-year company, a 100-year community, a 100-year thing that should exist, I don't know who you are or who you're going to be, but I love you already, and I need to think about how to take care of you already. And we should start with protecting civilians and infrastructure and realizing that OT is not the same thing as IT, and having an understanding that our shared infrastructure is worthy of protection. And it all comes back down to values. And it all comes back down to mutual respect. And when you can nail that and you can codify that as a culture, you are going to do wonderful, immeasurable things, and people are going to try to hurt you and hurt your kids, and we'll have the wartime discussions and all those things, but we will get through it. And we'll do it as a community, as we always have. Whether it's AI disruptions or geopolitical conflict, it will work when we go back to the core fundamentals. And so as you go throughout your rest of your BSides conference, and this beautiful thing that we have in terms of a community, and you think about what that means to you, take the opportunity to meet someone you don't know, take the opportunity to be the ships in the night passing by, and think about what would I want to be leaving for 100 years, and embrace that for the rest of your conference. And thank you so very much for allowing me to spend some time with you.